All right, why don't we get started? So, hi everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for today's Pratt Research Talk with Jerrod Delaine. I'm Rachel Asher, the Associate Director for the Office of Research and Strategic Partnerships. Our office's mission is to foster new and exciting research opportunities for faculty, staff, and centers at Pratt, and to help you make connections with each other and also with industry and community partners outside of the Institute. One way we're doing this is by providing a platform for research-active faculty to talk about their work and to inspire you to think about what might be possible in your own research at Pratt. In addition to our conversation with Jerrod today, I'd encourage you to check out our upcoming talk with Amanda Hunn on December 9th, where she'll discuss two topics, participatory research and eating together again. You can register via the Eventbrite link in the chat or go to prattresearch.org, where you can also see a recording of last month's talk with Rebecca Pales-Friedman on design approaches to a lunar landing pad. We're in the process of scheduling research talks for the spring semester, so if you're interested in presenting or know someone who would be great for our series, please reach out to us via research-partnership@pratt.edu. You can also contact us through that email to talk to me or another member of our team. We're happy to talk to you and guide you through whatever step you're at in your research. Whether you're just starting to consider a topic and want to bounce ideas off of someone, or you have a funder in mind and are building on research that's been grant funded for years, shoot us an email and we'll set up a time to talk more. Today, we're so excited to hear from Jerrod Delaine. Jerrod is a professor here at Pratt, and he's also an experienced real estate developer, designer, and builder with a skill set that includes design, construction, finance, affordable housing, and asset management. Jerrod is currently the Director of Development at a Harlem-based real estate development company, Carthage Real Estate Advisors. The firm focuses on workforce, housing, and urban communities in the New York City area. His current focus is utilizing access to capital markets, improving communities through real estate finance and development. Jerrod has been in the real estate development sphere for 10 years. He spent the first 5 years of his career at Forum Architecture and Interior Design, the majority of his efforts there focusing on project managing affordable housing projects in the Southeast region of the US. Jerrod has bachelor's degrees in architecture from Florida A&M University School of Architecture and Environmental Technology. He has a Master of Science degree from NYU Schack Institute of Real Estate. We'll start with a presentation today, followed by a conversation, so please get your questions and comments ready for him. Jerrod, over to you.
Thank you for the introduction. Welcome, everybody. I'm here today to tell you about the Desegregation Think Tank, some of the effort that we're working on. So first, let me tell you a little bit of backstory. About a year ago, I had posted a picture of a rendering of a new building in the South Bronx, beautiful rendering. And one of my colleagues who lives in San Francisco, she posts a sad face emoji. And I was like, why the sad face emoji? And she says, gentrification. And I said to her, ... we can have nice stuff too. Which is kind of like this undertone in the conversation, which is nice stuff isn't for us, right? And other neighborhoods have nice stuff. And nice stuff that comes in the neighborhood isn't even for us. Which the bigger picture, which is across America, in every city, there's good neighborhoods and there's not so good neighborhoods. And usually, right, the Black neighborhoods and the not so good neighborhoods, and the majority white neighborhoods are the good neighborhoods. And everything tied to that, from education, policing, employment, all of the above. So it was, something that I was very passionate about. I work primarily in affordable housing, as was mentioned earlier, but some of the restrictions around us were structurally put in place. So, some of you may have already heard this story, but I'll repeat it for those who haven't. There was a competition earlier this year that was titled Planetary Crisis. This is around February. And the competition asked for proposals from, housing and design professionals, what are some solutions? And, climate change is the obvious issue that is big, planetary problem. But I actually thought about writing about racism, which I felt was an ongoing crisis, a slow-moving crisis that not everybody is aware of nor have solutions to. So I started writing this paper, which spoke to how to acknowledge what happened. Here's the problems. Here's what happened. Here's exactly how it happened. And then I proposed solutions. So I wrote that paper with the assistance of a couple of my faculty, Deborah Gans, as well as Dr. Harriet Harris. Submitted the paper around March, and the Aubrey incident happened in Georgia, where there was a shooting from gentlemen who live in two different neighborhoods. And then the Breonna Taylor incident happened, where there was a shooting where the victim was from one neighborhood and the assailant was from another. And then the George Floyd incident happened. And it's just like back to back to back. And as we all know, there was an unrest that happened in cities across America where there was like, oh my God, what is happening? This can't continue to be this way. And I would like to propose that, part of the issue is that we're all living in separate communities. We're all living on these separate planets with different experiences, which I can't solve the world's problems, but I think through housing, I think we can actually make a difference for the positive. So after writing the paper, submitted, it got accepted to the competition. And I was speaking to, the dean at our School of Architecture, Dr. Harris, and, we discussed about, this paper was good, but we should take it further. And I made the suggestion that, we should maybe create a committee that we work on this on an ongoing basis. And that was the birth of the Desegregation Think Tank. So started pulling together the framework of it. It just so happened I was also a part of this organization called the Housing Consortium, which is a collection of design professionals, experts, both on the architecture side as well as the planning and policy side. And, I mentioned the idea to them and everybody was like, yeah, this is a great idea, Jerrod, let's do this. Again, as like cities were now starting to erupt. So this is like April, May, there's people marching in the streets. There's got to be change. This can't continue to be this way. We started to pull together the framework of this think tank. So, the goals of the group are, to be an advocate for change in housing policy across America. So that includes both the federal, state, as well as local, because there are different pieces over time that have been put in place that have incentivized segregation. And in the 1930s, 40s, 50s in America, it was basically illegal to do segregation. And now we're here in the 2000s, in a lot of cities, either those laws haven't been changed, or people haven't looked into it, or people have just accepted the way it is, which is Black people live over here and white folks live over there. And like, let's just continue this. It's always been this way, so that's the way it's going to be, where we don't accept that as fact. That us as design professionals, we can influence communities and we can influence change. I'm a real estate developer in practice. Like, part of my business is I'm going to affect a community, right? And hopefully I make it better, but I'm going to affect a community. It'll be different after I do this project. Either bring a new coffee shop to that street, I'm going to bring new affordable housing, I'm going to bring new home ownership. I'm going to affect this community. Part of this think tank is how can we affect change positively on a bigger scale, instead of just a building, just a block, but actual housing policy, which has been put in place that has structurally locked us into the situation. So the part of our long-term goals is to become a source of information on this type of housing policy. So specifically on segregation in America. The goal is eventually, if somebody wants to Google up segregation or desegregation, they'll find us and they'll find data, research, papers, different books that talk about the topic. We are a location they can find. A similar example is at NYU, they have what they call the Furman Center, which is a housing policy organization. If you're looking to do housing in New York City, they are a good resource that can tell you about home ownership, renting, building, right? They can talk about community development. They are a source where you can go and it's rich with information. That's what I want us to do for segregation and desegregation. I want us to be a resource, not the only resource, but a resource that'll be rich with information that they can use on an ongoing basis. Also long-term, hopefully, potentially we'll write a book. We'll write bunches of papers on different topics, which we'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, hopefully we can do something substantial. Recently, there's a book that's very popular in the topic called The Color of Law, which talks about across America how cities, states, and the national government instituted rules, restrictions, deed restrictions that said, yes, Black people cannot live here. Black people cannot buy a house here. My company is based in Harlem, right? For a period of time in New York City, we could not live downtown. We had to live in Harlem. We had to live in Bed-Stuy, right? So looking at how to unlock what was done before and make it more beneficial so that everybody has more opportunities, including those from African-American communities. So that's part of our long-term goals. In the short term, we're going to create a webpage very shortly where people can have that resource I talked about. They can come and find out information on the topic, as well as different organizations that's working on it. So as of late, we've been connecting with different organizations like the Regional Planners Association. In Connecticut, I just found out they have a Desegregate Connecticut group. So we're looking to connect with them, right? There's no reason we should work in a silo if other folks are already working on it, already working ahead on it. We're also connecting with the Pratt Center, which is an organization that has been around for 3-4 decades now that has been working on community development. So again, there's no reason for us to start from scratch. There's other organizations that have already been doing this work and been doing this groundwork. And hopefully we can build on what they've already done to try to create some positive change. Also in the short term, we want to facilitate conversations and exchange of information. Probably in the springtime, going to have some sort of panel conversation, some sort of symposium type situation where we can have some industry experts come in and talk to us. And it's funny, now that COVID has kicked in, we can't really travel so much. It's actually much easier to say to a speaker, instead of getting on a plane, flying to New York, staying in a hotel, for a day or two, hey, can you just give me an hour of time to jump into a Zoom? So I feel pretty positive that we'll be able to get some industry experts to come in and talk to us and bring that into, not only the Pratt family, but also the greater New York City area. Again, to create positive change, which is the goal. So I do want to quickly give a shout out to the team, Varen, Zara, Meta, Ron, John, Deborah, Karen, Chris. Are all parts of the team that have been contributing members. Also, as I said before, Dr. Harriet Harris has been a great supporter of the group. I really appreciate it. But those are, all of us are Pratt faculty. We have a few other individuals that have talked about being contributing to the team as well. A research assistant has recently reached out, as well as a few community development organizations. And 1 or 2 politicians, actually, that I won't necessarily speak on now, but a few politicians have speaked out about, hey, this is a good idea. Like, we should do this. And I'm like, yeah, we should. Let us help you. We'll create the framework. You just go take it forth and spread the good word. So let's talk a little bit about the structure. So what is desegregation, all right? And in my opinion, it's a process of ending separation of 2 groups, and usually that refers to races. There's also an argument about segregation of classes as well, which is definitely a thing, especially in cities. It's typically measured by having 2 dissimilar groups separated. So we're going to work on how to break down those systems so that folks who live in higher income communities can be more welcoming to diversity in income and class and race, and on vice versa, having folks in lower income strata communities be more receptive to change, because in my opinion, change is typically good. And change is constant also. So you can't just stay in the same community with the same neighbors forever. It's not really how communities work. So hopefully we can make it so it's beneficial and equitable for everybody as change and evolution happens. So that's partly of what the group is pushing to do, right? So Desegregation was a focus, even going back to the civil rights era, where they were fighting for, equal employment and equal housing opportunities. So even going back to the Brown versus Board of Education type stories, where they go into court saying, listen, we are equal, we should be equal opportunities. I think if you look across America, it's still not quite equal yet. And I would argue that that's not on accident. So I think we should work on making it easier for people to change and making it easier for people to evolve, right? So we've called this group specifically Desegregation Think Tank. A think tank in particular is a policy institute. It's a research institute that does research and advocacy, typically on topics related to a certain policy. So many times they're related to university organizations, which we are. This was birthed out of Pratt Institute, and very much we're using the research and knowledge out of Pratt Institute to, not only give professionals out there information, but as well, our students, which will become professionals of the future. So, I jokingly tell folks, I teach real estate development. I jokingly tell folks that hopefully a couple of my students will go out there and make the world better. I know I'm not going to bat for 100, but some of them may say, man, professor told me I should make neighborhoods better. And hopefully that resonates with a couple of them, that they go out there and don't just do whatever, but actually are thoughtful what they do. So hopefully the think tank creates, policy ideas that we can present to individuals who could affect change, be it local politicians, be it those on the state or federal level, that they can go out and do things. So part of our effort is, to raise funding, come up with business models, so that we can advocate positive change. This is a research presentation. So part of our effort is doing research on the topic, creating papers. As I mentioned, we're going to create a website where you can come and have access to information. So, a research project in general is when someone conducts an experiment to find answers to a question, right? So usually when I talk to folks, I usually say, hey, you notice how in every city in America, there's Black neighborhoods and white neighborhoods. And most people nod their head like, yes. And I say, usually there's bad neighborhoods and good neighborhoods. And people usually nod their head, yes. And I'm like, why is that? And they're kind of like, huh. Most people pause, like, it's so big of a problem. I was born in this community. It's just always been that way, right? I've been born in this homogenous community, this all-white community, or I was born in this all-Black community. And it's just always been that way. And I've never changed it. In many cases, never thought about changing it. And that's what, this group is looking to do, which is to raise those eyebrows and then pose solutions to that problem. So that's, kind of the heart of what this research project is trying to do, which is find solutions. It's not easy. It's not going to be quick. Not everybody's going to say, yeah, we want change. Like, most people don't like change. That's in white neighborhoods and Black neighborhoods. So it's important work that we're doing. It's not going to be easy, but we're ready for that. We're ready for that exchange of information. So, and ultimately our goal is to solve the problem. That's the long-term goal, which who knows if that happens in our lifetime, but hopefully cities can be improved in all neighborhoods, in all communities, right? So the current situation, we all see the effects of home ownership in America. The vast majority of Americans' wealth is in their home. And for a very long time, African Americans were kept out of that. So I've been blessed that my family got into the home ownership track a long time ago, but many African Americans have not had that experience. So, one of the big pushes of the group currently is to work on economic development. So I'm working with a few of my team members, including John Shapiro, on specifically what are some new creative ideas that will incentivize economic development in communities. Also health, which as we see in the COVID situation, people's living accommodations is having an effect on their health. And many people in New York City have left, right? We all know that. Oh, everybody's leaving. But guess what? The people who don't make a lot of money aren't leaving. right? Which is directly affected by their income, right? So that's what I'm saying. Housing, right, has had a direct effect on some of these other pieces of quality of life and your opportunities. Also policing, which I'm not a policing expert, but police policy has been designed and created in many cities strategically in a certain way. And I'm not going to get too deep into it, but New York City, they had a stop and frisk policy, and specifically, there were specific communities that they did that, which just so happened to be the communities that were economically disincentivized years ago, right? So looking at how can we make communities better, not only better job opportunities, not only better housing accommodations, but also better security and protection for the citizens within it, which is also tied to education. So one of my team members, Zara and Matea, are working specifically on the connection between housing and education, right? Because in many cases, the quality of education you receive is tied to where you're living, right? In America, there's this big game about living in good school zones, which has a direct effect on your tax base, which has a direct effect on the education, right? You get a good education, you have a higher likelihood of having a better employment situation, which you higher likelihood of getting into housing ownership, and so on and so forth, right? So housing, as I said before, is one of those catalyst pieces of the puzzle that I think we can use it to incentivize and encourage all those other things to work in a positive direction. So I think our expertise as housing experts, we can start engaging some of those other arms like economic development, right? Banking is having a whole revolution right now where they're looking into DEI and ESG and all these other acronyms, where they're saying, man, we were a part of the problem. How can we do better, right? I think the president of JP Morgan Chase, I believe, gave an interview recently where he said, yeah, like we were a part of the problem. So we now need to allocate some money to be a part of the solution. That's the type of stuff where I think we can then take this moment, take this opportunity to then encourage positive change. Economic development being one of them, right? Part of having a good community is having, homes that can take care of themselves, that can feed themselves, supply for themselves, as well as, security, that they can be secure and have happy enjoyment, right? So part of this group is how can we be a catalyst to encourage those things to happen, right? So our current structure, we meet bi-weekly currently. We have a call on Tuesdays, and we also meet in between on different individual meetings. So different research topics, different levels of expertise, different organizations we've talked to, we kind of meet in between the weeks. So that's been good. Again, I mentioned earlier, most of us are part of the Housing Consortium. So that group also meets every other Tuesday as well. So, this is a component of housing. So it's been pretty exciting to have so many really bright, smart folks come together and exchange ideas and then go out, do some work and do some solution building. So we also are working on building some cohorts, some of which I've mentioned already, like the Pratt Center, on things they're already working on. How can we kind of connect to them, help their projects go better, and then as well launch what we're trying to do. We're discussing a number of topics, but a few topics we've discussed as of recently. What type of change do communities want, and figuring out how we can provide what they want and need. Which is a delicate dance, because as designers, especially in undergrad, for me at least, you learn how to create a great building for all these reasons that you've learned, right? Be it for form, function, right? But another variable that I think all of us in the design space is starting to learn is like, we should also engage the community on what they want, and not presume that we have the best knowledge and we're coming as the experts. But instead we're coming as advocates, right? So we're looking at, what type of change can we create? What kind of solutions that we can provide that doesn't feel like a threat? Gentrification is a bit of an issue that we all know about, that should be monitored, that should not be allowed to be prolific, but communities will change. And you know what? In Black neighborhoods, there are going to be white people that move in, and in white neighborhoods, there are going to be Black people that move in, and that's okay. And then we should make it equitable for everybody to do that. People shouldn't get hurt for that to happen. And that's part of what the work that we're working on. Also looking at, new school solutions, as I mentioned earlier, how school is tied directly to our housing. Could we maybe unravel that some? Because currently, the wealth in America is rising to the top. The short quote everybody uses, the rich are getting richer. Resources are floating to the top, and education is also floating in that direction. So how can we provide enough resources for everybody that they can, provide a future for them and their families? Again, we're hoping to use housing as that catalyst. Also figuring out how to create a sense of community. One of the beautiful things about New York is that they really, really love their neighborhoods. Partly because people live in their communities for a very long time in New York, much longer than many cities. We're much more transient, like me, I've moved around a few times. But figuring out how, even in this rapid change that we're proposing, how to still keep a sense of community, right? Because those communities, I work in Harlem, they love this community and I love it too. But how can we create change and maintain the joy that's already here? These are some of the topics that we're talking about in the group. Also, one of the big issues we're having to deal with, which is culture. Because you know what? Everybody isn't on board with diversity and inclusion, as we all know. So, just because we create these rules doesn't mean everybody wants to do it. But what I say to folks is, you know what? We don't all want to drive the speed limit either. But that's why we have speed limits. And that's why you get a ticket if you drive too fast. Whether you like it or not, your decision could hurt other people. And we have laws that'll stop you or at least punish you when you do it. And that's where we like to get to, which is, listen, everybody's not going to be for diversity, right? Not everybody wants equality for women. But you know what? We're passing laws to stop that. So that if you do that bad thing, here's what will happen. And this change is happening. And I believe in this passionately, as you can tell. Also, financing changes I mentioned earlier, the banking industry is getting on board, which I think is important because money runs this place, in America at least. So using the arm of capitalism to our benefit, I think is the way to go. I think fighting against it would be a very tough march. And then our future plans is, again, continue to write papers, continue to get the word out, and get a bigger platform to do so. And, in conclusion, we're really excited about this. We're really passionate about this. I'm really passionate about it, as you can tell, and really excited about, creating positive change. So that concludes my presentation. If you want to reach me directly, my email is jdelaine@pratt.edu. And we'll have a webpage up soon, so we'll have that in the not so distant future. So thank you.
My name's Allison Druin, and I'm Associate Provost for Research and Strategic Partnerships. And Jerrod, wonderful comments. Your thoughts are provocative. If you look in the chat, we have a lot of questions for you. But since I'm moderating the questions, I get the first question, and then we'll go to everyone else's question. How about that?
Let's do it.
But if you still have if you have not put a question in to the chat, please do. And if you want to ask the question verbally, we'll just unmute yourself. Otherwise, I can certainly sort of read it with my bad glasses here. Anyway, but let me start with just an overarching question that probably you could give a dissertation on, but just a short thought about what has surprised you in your activism and research journey over the last few years. Has there been any big surprises, or is this all things that you expected to see?
Well, the one thing that surprised me, which I should have saw it coming, is that not everybody wants this to happen. Not everybody wants change, which kind of caught me off guard at first. I was like, what? But then I was like, yeah, like most people don't want change. They've lived in Bensonhurst, right, forever, right? Or they lived in this area of LA forever, and it's always been this way. And they're like, wait, you want to change this? Same thing in African American communities. There's African American communities like, wait, no, gentrification is bad, all bad. And I was like, like the story I gave you in the very beginning, where I was like, hey, this pretty building is coming to this African American community, and her initial thought was like, this is bad. I don't want this. I was like, really? That was a little surprising, but it's good. It's a learning part of the journey that I'm like, oh, okay, all right. I need to answer that question. I need to solve that problem as well, which is people may not be receptive to this. Then I need to talk to them to understand what their issue is and hopefully can solve the problem and have a win-win. So that was surprising.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, all right. Kent, you have a wonderful question here. Do you want to open up your mic? Yeah, and ask it.
Yeah, thanks, Allison. Jerrod, this is a great presentation, great work creating the Desegregation Think Tank. I think that's the right step, and this country, our society, really needs a think tank around this topic. We've been working on it for so many years, and seems like we get it one step forward and 2 steps back kind of thing. But right. So two questions, and this also comes from the fact that I have a sibling, my younger sister, is in the affordable housing arena area. But one, just the concept, right? The construct of affordable housing, does that by definition perpetuate segregation because it is for a specific economic class? And you're saying, okay, this is for those people below this income, and therefore, that segregates a population. And then to try to combat that, or for public housing projects, certainly, would it be would an initiative where the public housing projects were able to accommodate a full spectrum of race and class? Because you'd mentioned that, if you live in this neighborhood, you have these schools, and if you live in this neighborhood, you have these schools. But if you brought those people within those neighborhoods together, right, and it was truly desegregated mixed housing with high income, low income, black, white, all the different colors of the rainbow mixed together, and that was, versus like, well, this is the affordable housing over here, and this is the free market housing over here, and this is the white neighborhood here and the black neighborhood. I mean, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
So the first question, affordable housing currently, you think of a black neighborhood, which by definition is not what it is. But because African Americans have been historically in the lower end of the economic bracket, it has tended to be the case. So the structures of them, as far as financing them, has nothing to do with race. The implementation of it, typically the way it's set up currently, you have to do it in areas where the land costs are cheaper, which tends to be in either far places or African American communities where the land costs are lower. And as of the last, 40 years, it's tended to be in the inner city areas. So I think the mechanisms have just kind of lined it up that way, and relates to all the things that I just talked about before, which is the education system perpetuates it, right? And the employment situation perpetuates it. And this presumes for a second that people aren't purposely doing this to hurt us. We'll presume that for a second. But yeah, currently the systems aren't legally just for Black people. A school teacher who's white, who makes $30,000 a year, also applies for affordable housing as well and has the right to live in it. And then your second question, what was your second question again?
Well, just, if there's publicly funded housing or housing that gets, has public funds, does it make sense, rather than to make it, to create these sort of artificial segregated communities, whether it's by income or whatever, to say, look, there's going to be, 25% free market, 25% below market, and then have those kind of incentives so that there truly is a mixed community there versus, you know, a desegregated community versus like everybody's earns below $75,000 a year, you know, because,
Right.
you know, you're right. It's not strictly on racial basis, but, you know, sometimes
Right.
it ends up working out that way. We have a friend who's getting some, or has an opportunity to get some affordable housing. She's divorced, and now she's going to be rolling off of you know, childcare support, and she makes less than $76,000 a year. So she qualifies for certain affordable, or, you know, housing, and she's looking into it. And but yeah, I mean, it. And then she's saying, well, what's the neighborhood that I want to live in too? You know,
Which is right, which goes back to the neighborhood comment, right?
it goes back into the neighborhood thing, right?
Go back to the neighborhood thing. But specifically about public housing / affordable housing, part of the paper I wrote initially, so the second solution was redeveloping the public housing stock, because it actually all wasn't built specifically for very low income brown people. That wasn't the original construction of it in the 1940s and 50s. That just over time, as like different political arcs happened, that they said, all right, cap income. And then, all right, cap income even lower. It wasn't built originally so that people with zero income were almost the only people in the building, which is economically unsustainable unless the government supports it, which historically the government has been underinvesting in. So it's just been a very bad, slowly sinking ship, unfortunately. So part of the paper I wrote, my second solution again, was that we need to reinvest in those buildings and figure out how to increase in diversity in that too. So that non-African American person who lost their job or got divorced, that they be willing to live in public housing too in this community because they feel safe and comfortable living in that community. As well as those that live in that community should be receptive to that, right? So we got to provide education on multiple levels. There's like, yeah, there's a non-African American person down the hallway from you, and you shouldn't be afraid of that. That is okay, right? Because there's people who've only lived in a homogenous community their whole life. That's all they know. That's all they've ever seen. So like, wait, there's this new person. Like, this is right. This is a whole new thing going on. So for each side, as well as investing in the building, which makes it better, and we get higher rents in them. So I think economic diversity in the building, so that yes, if the person next door to you is college educated, right, or a doctor, lawyer, accountant, a cop, whatever, right, that adds diversity to the community, that the kids have different aspirations as well. So that those in that community, like, oh, I want to be a real estate developer. I want to be an architect. My neighbor's dad is an accountant, right? There's just different aspirations. Whereas, unfortunately, many of the public housing, right, there's the limited professional diversity options that they see. And obviously, we see the negative cycle of that over an extended period of time.
Right. Thank you very much.
So,
thank you.
Hopefully
That's great.
Question.
That was great. Okay. Next question is from Mark Parsons. Mark, do you want to ask your question?
Sure. Jerrod, thanks a lot. This is amazing. I'm really glad you're doing this work. And actually, I'm really glad you're all, in doing this work, you're giving opportunity for people to talk about important things. I mean, that's a huge part of it. So thank you for that. To boil my question down to more simple terms, you know, I mentioned policy and economics and social issues, but really there's health and education and, you know, all kinds of things that go into the mix. It's really about the nature-nurture argument. It is kind of, you know, some things are symptomatic of others, and then the others kind of reinforce the first thing. So it's really about the social concerns that underlie, or racism that underlies a lot of the policies. And policy as driver or sustainer of racist positions, long-held racist positions, et cetera. And essentially, my question is your think tank addressing just code and policy and built environment issues, or is it also addressing social issues directly, but not just as a kind of subtext of the other stuff?
So the short answer is yes. Just because we pass a law doesn't make people unracist the next day or anti-racist the next day. That part of our effort is providing education for everybody, Black people, white people, rich people, people from lower income strata. They're like, hey, here's the benefits of diversity in your community. I mean, one of the things I love about New York is that we're kind of all shoved into this small space, right? That you could be on the train and there's like a millionaire next to an artist, next to a financier, next to a fashionista, that we're all kind of agreed to like be shoved into this small area. And there's a benefit to that we all kind of enjoy. That I think communities need to embrace that. And New York has segregation issues too, but I think as a city, we've all accepted that, yeah, I'm gonna meet different people all the time because I'm in close proximity to them, and I'll reap the benefit of meeting other people, Black people, Jewish people, Asian, Indian, right, South American, right, Persian, like from all over the place. We've all accepted that in being here, that's gonna happen like all the time, and like that's a good thing. I think part of our effort, Mark, as you just said, is getting that message across to folks and educating it. I spoke at the NOMA conference a couple of weeks ago, and one of the architects said, how can us as architects help? And I said, in short, like education. Like we got to inform people why this is a good idea. And then obviously, eventually, the built space should follow, as Mark said.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Dr. Taki Brown, am I saying your first name wrong?
Oh no, you're saying it, Dr. Taki Brown.
Do you want to ask your question?
Yes.
Oh, there you go. There you are.
Oh, okay, you can hear me. All right. One of my questions would be, lovely presentation. I'm glad that this is happening, and people are talking about this now. And so I sort of understand what you're saying because I live partly in Ireland and in New York as well. So I understand what it means to go through this as a Black woman in architecture. And so talking about this makes me ask the question, are you looking at just monumental buildings, or are you going to look at addressing the whole cultural landscape as well?
Expand on cultural landscape.
Sorry?
You said cultural landscape, right?
Yes.
Expand on that.
All right. So this means we're talking about the entire area, right? So culturally, how is this going to be addressed beyond just buildings, beyond buildings, and then we're taking in the cultures of people as well. So the whole entire cultural landscape.
So my premise is we can use housing as a catalyst, because it's connected to a lot of these other pieces. It can't happen alone without the banking industry participating, without the policing situation being evolved, the education piece I talked about. I'm not an educator and I'm not an educator system, and I don't know how all those mechanisms work, but I know housing. So if I can use housing and housing policy as a way to get those to move into a positive direction, that's the goal, is to use housing policy to spark those. So the group's called desegregation, right? So segregation structurally put where you lived, and very often put where you worked, where your friend system is, right? You know all your neighbors. You don't know the folks on the other side of town.
True.
So will I solve racism? Probably not.
Okay.
But I'll make it harder for you to do it in an apartment building.
Yes. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Cool.
That's wonderful. Next, Vicky. Vicky, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Jerrod. This is fantastic. This initiative is really great and so important, and very much aligned with some of the research that I've been doing about historic preservation and community development. and a lot of my work in those fields. And my question really builds on Dr. Brown's question, which is about sort of community character and community heritage and culture. And what I found in my work in communities of color and in Black communities, that there is a real fear of the loss of that feeling of community, of, you know, our cultural landscape.
Right.
You know, like the character of this community that's sort of, you know, spoken of in terms of like the businesses that are there, the local businesses that I shop at, the church or house of worship I attend, the other
Right.
cultural assets. And I think there's sort of a natural tension between the idea of desegregating communities and this, you know, fear that communities of color have that, you know, we withstood the worst disinvestment. We invested in our own neighborhood. We became entrepreneurs. We held on. We saved our neighborhood for ourselves. Now, what happens when new people and different people start to move in? How do we still preserve that sense of place for ourselves and just attention?
Right.
And that's kind of where I'm really so interested in that. You know, there are no right answers, I don't think, but I'm very curious about your point of view about it. And, you know, would also love to talk to you as we, you know, into the future about like research that's about this issue.
So, you know, I've been at this firm since 2013 now. And we were actually a little bigger back then. And most of the staff at the time were from Harlem, and I'm from Florida, for those who don't know. And we used to have a lot of debates about this topic, about how the community should change and how it should evolve. We had lots and lots of discussions, arguments, debates about this. And the short answer is there's no perfect way to do it. You know, Harlem in particular has gone through trauma, abuse. Disinvestment is like the least of the problems. You know, I jokingly said to some of my colleagues when I first came here, like, there was a war on drugs, and guess which side you guys were on? Right? You were on the other side of abuse. So with that in mind, how do we then go forward and make the community better, stronger for those who survive that? How can we make it beneficial for them as it goes forth? You know, talk with one of my colleagues is from Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. You know, Brooklyn has gone through an incredible renaissance. How do we make sure all the brown people that live over there also benefit from the economic increase, the improvement of that borough? So, you know, LA's got the same problem, DC, Boston, San Francisco, Oakland, right? All these other cities have this same problem, which is evolution is happening. We were abused in the previous iterations. How do we now thrive and participate in the economy going forward, as well as make good neighborhoods for our own communities and how to live in them? I personally, as a designer / financier, think that we can use the tools that are out there. It ain't rocket science. Let me tell you guys, I know developers, I know bankers, they ain't that smart. They just know information and they know how to use it. And that, you know, us as designers, you know, most of us, you know, us as urban planners, we can use the same tools that evolves communities. So that's my thoughts, Vicky, which is, it's not easy, but we can do it. We just need to listen. And one of the solutions Meta actually came up with recently, which is engaging now with local communities. So we're starting with the South Bronx and engaging them soon with a conversation.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank
Wonderful.
you.
Thank you. We do have time for one more question. Denise, if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question. Denise, can you unmute?
Good evening.
yourself? Oh, there you are. Okay.
Hi.
Hey, Mom.
Hello, everyone. I am the mother of Gregory Jerrod Delaine. and I'm so proud of what you are doing. I did want to, I asked the question, how would you approach a community in which you're looking to whether you're redeveloping an existing building, whether it's a residential property or commercial or vacant land, again, whether you're redeveloping something that's already there or building something new, how do you communicate that responsibly to the community and solicit, respectfully solicit their input before you do anything?
Fair enough. Fair enough. Great question, Mom. We are, part of the benefit of our company is we're located in this neighborhood. So we have a vested interest in the success of the projects in this community. So meeting with them regularly is what we do. So literally just 12 o'clock, like an hour ago, I actually had a call with the community here. So for our project we're building on 124th Street, we actually have a weekly call at 12 o'clock where they get to express thoughts, opinions, suggestions. Oh my God, it's loud on Tuesday at 7 a.m. You don't notice it. Oh, they're throwing trash on the ground on Thursday at 6 o'clock. You don't notice it. So we're giving them a voice. We're giving them a space to communicate with us. What that also does is gives us a chance to give them our voice, which is, hey, by the way, we're creating affordable housing. So you're also getting our story across. So we actually had some difficulties with our project earlier on when COVID first kicked in about how to safely continue the construction. And part of that actually brought in the borough president's office into the conversation, which actually ended up being a blessing because then we had a direct connection to the borough president's office and said, hey, by the way, we're making this affordable housing, as well as market rate housing, as well as home ownership. We're located in Harlem. Like, by the way, right, here's our voice and our story. So that it's not just, oh, we're just big bad developers doing condos and kicking people out. Right. So meeting with them and engaging with them is the short answer, is how we can, improve that relationship going forward. Most people don't know a lot of developers. Most people think they're big bad people.
Right.
So it's actually kind of neat when I go to like networking events and they're like, oh, you're a developer too.
Wonderful.
So letting them know like, hey, by the way, you can do this too. You can be a part of this too. And, here's how it works. And that we can make neighborhoods better.
Right. And I think the word relationship is a key word, a very important word.
Exactly. As a matter of fact, Mom, I have class next Tuesday. I'm actually bringing my students. We're going to stand on the sidewalk and look at the construction site. So I actually invited a nonprofit community leader and the community board liaison to actually come and speak to the students. So Ed said, he's like, you want to scare them away? I said, well, they got to learn one day.
True.
Got to engage the community. If you're going to build a building of a significant size, you got to engage the community. It's not always going to be the stuff you want to hear, but you need to hear it so it's successful.
True. That's true. That's true. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mom.
Oh, to have my mother be able to ask the last question in my talk what a gift. That is so wonderful. What a wonderful session. I wish we could go on forever, but I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank Rachel for organizing. I want to thank Jerrod for leading such a wonderful discussion, and all of you for being here. And please come back again. In a few weeks, we'll have another speaker. And with that, I thank you all, and we look forward to good discussions in the future, and have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
You too.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, Jerrod.
Thanks. Great job.
Good job.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And thank you so much to everyone for allowing this opportunity, not only for him to present, but for everybody else.
Nice to meet your mom too. That was awesome. See ya.
Thanks. Take care.